I'm going to draw out the pattern for my cutting board. I'm going to go with a traditional shape. I folded the paper in half so that when I cut it out, it's going to be nice and symmetrical. So I have my pair of scissors here and my paper, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that out right now. The next thing I need to do is I need to choose my wood. On the left, we have some cherry, and on the right, we have some maple. Now, there's not a real important reason to choose one over the other. It really depends on personal preference. I'm probably going to go with the maple because I have a little bit more of that in stock. Both are hardwoods. If anyone can comment or put in comments the difference between a hardwood and a softwood and an easy way to identify, I will give you 100 Mr. White points. I need to cut a length of board, and the best tool for cutting a length of a board is the miter saw. Now, you might have heard this being called a chop saw before. This is a chop saw, and a chop saw simply goes up and down, and it has limited function, whereas the miter saw can pivot in two different directions. So you can cut angles into your board much easier, but we're going to use it essentially as a chop saw because we're just cutting a length. One of the hardest things for kids to find is the lockdown pin, and that right there is your lockdown pin. So in order to disengage it, you have to push the saw down, which I'll do with my elbow, and then you pull the pin out, and that lets, see if I can do this without stopping the recording, lets the saw come up and be useful. Now I've got to get my little camera stand, and I'll go ahead and cut a length of the wood. I do have to cut more than I need because when I surface it, there are limits to how short a board you can put in the surfacer. I went ahead and measured 18 inches. Now I believe your safety sheet says that no boards less than 16 inches should go on the surfacer, but I want to make sure this board is big enough for someone else to use. When I drew my line, I did use a square to make sure that my line was going to be straight and square. When I cut, I'm going to cut to the left of my line to make sure that I get this full length. If I cut on the line or to the right of the line, I'm actually going to have less than what I measured. When I set it on the miter saw, I want to put the saw down without it actually being on to make sure I'm going to cut to the left of that line. I could also, if needed, use this clamp to hold the wood in place. But I'll have adequate room for my hand. I'm going to keep it roughly 6 inches away from the blade. I'm going to keep my thumb tucked in. It does no good to keep your hand away from the blade if your thumb is sticking way out. So don't do that. Make sure your thumb is in, you're holding the board down and against the fence.